sounded so good. Navigating today's real estate market can be tricky. Want to buy or sell a house, finance or insure a house, or stuck with a house and don't know what to do? Florida Talk Real Estate has been your local one-stop real estate shop since 2012. Get the advice you need from your local real estate pros. Here are your hosts, Jim Paola and Johnny C. live on Real Radio.
Hey, happy South Florida, everybody. This is the Florida Talk Real Estate Show, and you've got Jimmy D, half of the Jimmy D and Johnny C lineup. Johnny's taking a well-deserved vacation day today. I hope he enjoys. I think he's out there doing music. I'm not sure, but whatever he's doing, I hope he has a blast. But we still got a great show for you today, and we've got Mike Rauch from the mortgage firm. Hey, Mike, how are you doing today?
All right. Yes, in the house. Good morning.
And we've also, of course, got producer extraordinaire Jimothy. How are you doing, Jimothy?
Hello, and good morning, gentlemen. Happy Saturday. Good to be here with you.
I wanted to ask you about the football helmet on the shelf, the F1. Okay. Is that an old Florida emblem?
Yep. Yeah, it's a Florida Gators helmet.
I've never seen that emblem before.
It just for the audience, since we can't see. It is got the letter F in blue, of course, a Florida blue color, with a circle around it. And I guess it's a throwback uniform from many, many years ago. I couldn't tell you what year or anything.
On a white helmet.
Yeah.
It kind of looks like a Miami University.
Yeah, it does a little bit. It's a white helmet with an orange stripe and a blue F in it. And I don't know. They did it wrong. They did it completely wrong. They needed to call it FU.
Oh,
needed FU in there.
Yeah, that didn't make it out of committee.
Mike was wondering if they were using leather helmets when I went to UF.
I kind of made a joke because it's definitely an older style. It's throwback. I was like, oh, that's what they were wearing when you were there, Jim. Jim goes, helmets.
Yep.
They were leather then.
I told you the story once of how I was voted most hated man on campus. That's the actual title that I was given at University of Florida.
It's an actual award that you won?
I don't know if I would call it an award, but yes. Yeah. But I was honored as, if you will, and I'm saying that facetiously, is the most hated man on campus.
Wow.
And they actually called it man on campus, and what happened was I got a scoop. This is, I think, 1986. It's probably 86. It might have been 87.
Right.
And Jimmy Buffett was supposed to come do the Gator Ground. He had never done the Gator Ground ever. And they asked him year after year after year, and he turned it down. He finally said yes. So the student government group that booked him gave me the scoop to let me know that Jimmy Buffett was coming to Gator Ground. Right. Back then, the Gator Ground was called the world's largest student-run pep rally. Right. That's what it's the annual pep rally for the football team.
Okay.
But they called it Gator Ground. And they always bring in big acts. Like we had Robin Williams, Billy Crystal, Bob Hope, Smothers Brothers. This is 87, guys.
Sure. Big time.
But anyway, we had all those acts. So
wait, is that before their comeback? Right, because the Smothers Brothers had a comeback show.
This is probably
probably late 80s.
Yeah, there was comeback time, not original Smother Brothers, but what they were pretty old. I remember seeing them; they were pretty old.
Did they do the yo-yos?
I don't remember. I don't remember their act that much. I just remember that they were there. They weren't, it wasn't very memorable. Now Robin Williams,
that's it.
Oh my God, that one was memorable.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they gave me this scoop that Jimmy Buffett's coming to the Gator Growl. So I run it on the college newspaper, runs on the front page of the newspaper, big scoop, and all the state wires pick it up through Associated Press. So all over the state, it was like Jimmy Buffett coming to Gator Growl. It was actually state news. And I'm a college kid, so I'm really happy that my newspaper, my articles everywhere. Well, I walk into my journalism class and I'm thinking, I'm big man on campus, right? And I walk in, I got a front page on the, in the college paper today, and I'm in the journalism class, and the professor goes, "Hey, nice." And he was old grizzled reporter, and he was like, "Hey, I see that you made the front page today, Jim." And I'm like, yep. And I'm beaming. And he goes, "You've got an F." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah. Anytime you spell somebody's name wrong,
Oh no.
You get an automatic, if you have a factual error, spell somebody's name wrong, you get an automatic F, right?
No.
So
You didn't have an editor at the time?
I did. We had a bunch of editors, and what we did is we said Jimmy Buffet to attend Gator Ground because we didn't have the extra T.
Right. Okay.
So we called it Jimmy Buffet through the whole thing, and nobody caught it.
Yeah. Nowadays, grammar is not.
Yeah, who would care, right? Probably get an A+ for that story, right? Because I did it wrong, right? Yeah. So anyway, so what happened was nobody told me the contract for the concert for his attendance was inches thick, right? It was an inches thick contract. It was crazy. I had seen some contract stuff in government reporting for student government when I was at the college paper. And that thing, that sucker was thick. And buried in that contract said that it was going to be a secret that he was coming.
That's what I thought. I remember you telling this story, I think off air one time.
Yep, and it was a secret.
I knew there was something. I was waiting for the twist.
And because they violated the contract because it went state wires and everything, he pulled out.
Yeah, so but it wasn't even, you weren't even talking about him.
I know. I was only talking about Jimmy Buffet. You know. So he pulled out, and the students were so upset. And I couldn't walk anywhere for weeks and weeks. The fraternity people were, and anytime I tried to go in a bar or restaurant, the fraternity guys were driving me crazy because they hated the college paper because we were a bunch of, bleeding heart, whatever that, what they think. And so the frat boys, if I walked into a bar, people wanted to get in fist fights with me all the time. So I just kind of like hunkered down for a few weeks until it all went away. And then at the end of the year, the college magazine, we worked at the college newspaper, but the college magazine, they have this end of the semester thing. And then there was a section saying most hated man on campus. And then they talked about how I made Jimmy Buffett not come to the concert.
Was there ever an explanation as to why? He just wanted to be a surprise, or he wanted to be low key? He didn't want to be associated.
I never got the answers to it. And the thing is that we were actually getting bomb threats at the college paper because our paper was off campus. So the police were coming a bunch of times because we were getting bomb threats that they're going to blow up the paper. We never figured out what happened. But he ended up coming, but it was like 15 years later or something. He ended up coming and going to the Gator Ground. But anyway, I always voted most famous man on campus. I don't know how we got on that, but I got on a tangent here.
We were talking about the Florida logo.
Oh, the Florida logo. Yeah, where I was voted. That's why I call UFFU. So anyway, we have a lot to talk about today. We're going to talk about a couple of closings we had this week and some teachable moments for buyers and sellers. We're also going to talk about how I made one of my buyers this week homeless. That's right. They just bought a house and hours later they were homeless. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. And we have a lot to talk about of what's going on. One of the things, I read an article and I thought it was interesting to talk about today. And they asked this question: will we ever see 3% mortgage rates again? So we're going to talk a little bit about that today and just like what's happening in the market right now, what the economists expect. We know we're in a lot of not very known times. We're kind of in the unknown right now with the economy. A lot of people don't know what's going on in the future of the economy. And a lot of people don't know what to do with the biggest decision of their lives for most of them at that point, which is deciding whether to buy or sell. That's usually the most biggest purchase or biggest sale that people ever do in their lives. And maybe they'll do it 3 to 5 times in their lifetime.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And we got a whole bunch of other stuff for you. And of course, we'll take your calls on the air, which we love that. We had a couple of callers last week, which were really good calls. Thank you so much. So
it's actually a good show to call because it's just you and me.
Yes, it's just me and Mike and Jimothy.
And Jimothy. But
Jimothy's always here. The reason why we don't mention Jimothy, because Jimothy's like having the radio tower. If we don't have Jimothy, we don't have a show at all.
Yeah.
Because he's the only one that knows how to work the board.
And never on camera.
So, Jimothy, do you know how they were supposed to call us if they want to call us today?
877-927-6969. That number hasn't changed, and I don't know, forever that I've always been with Real Radio. It's always been 877-927-6969.
I used to
the frequency has changed.
Yeah, St. Lucy's changed a little bit. I still miss Dr. Rich's deep baritone voice when he used to say the call letters, like to call us now.
Sure.
And the way he did it with the pauses and everything, it was very cool. I remember when we first started the show, I used to try to mimic it.
Yeah.
But,
he was the king of pregnant pause. That he knew right where to put it too, and it's a lost art. It really is. You don't hear much anymore. You know what's been coming up on my TikToks recently for my For You page is a lot of the old stories that Paul Harvey used to say.
Oh yeah.
Now the rest of the
now
story.
you know the rest of the story.
and
I love those.
He was again two guys that I kind of compare to one another, especially with the cadence of the way that they would speak, Paul Harvey and Dr. Rich Dickerson.
In fact, I think the Love Doctors used to have a bit on their show about Paul Harvey talking about bongs, right? It was a bong thing or a water pipe or something.
I don't think they made it, but because he used to do, the live reads on air. Paul Harvey did. Right. And somebody he must have done a news story one time about marijuana and bongs, and then that's where they got all the clips. And since he had such a distinctive and punctual type of cadence, it was easy to clip certain words, and somebody put that together. But they used to play that.
That
all
was
the time.
hilarious. That was
I don't
really
know
fun.
That's got to be around here somewhere.
And you know what else I just saw recently? I saw on Facebook today when I woke up, some guy, I think his name was John, so whoever it is, hello. He put out a thing of a short of TJ as a clip on the Love Doctors.
Really?
It was a 2-minute.
No
it was
kidding.
a 2-minute clip from. And what he did was he took the clip and then put it into AI and asked AI what was going on, and they had no idea. And they were talking back and forth. The AI and the guy was talking back and forth about TJ's clip.
That's funny.
Do you think he's hurt? Well, and then the AI's like, we're not sure. Because
Wait, who's TJ?
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot. Mike, you don't know this? I thought that you had listened to all the back years. TJ was a famous caller, one of the most popular callers into the Love Doctors. Love Doctors was a show kind of like ours, a live call-in show. But I always called it... No,
I remember the show, and I would listen to, not like religiously, but I would listen to it.
So TJ was one of the famous callers, and he would just call in from time to time, and he used to go to these live events and do all this crazy stuff. And I'll remember... They used to say to him, hey, TJ, go to your fridge right now. And TJ would go to his refrigerator. Do you remember this stuff? And he would say, do you have any mayonnaise? What do you got in your fridge? And TJ would start mentioning what he got in his fridge. And then it would stop and say, go back to that mayonnaise. How much you got in there? And he'd say, eat the jar of mayonnaise. And they would say, and then drink the pickle juice. And one time that he said they tried to get him to stuff his hand down his throat.
Yeah. Well, that's he did say
you'd hear this noise of him trying to stuff. And you had no idea for real whether it was real or not. Right. You didn't know. It's like that was the whole thing about some of those callers back then. It's like, is this real or is it not real?
Is it a radio bit or is it
it's pretty funny.
Is it real? Yeah.
Anyway, enough about that.
Well, maybe TJ will call in.
Yeah, maybe TJ. Hey, TJ, if you're listening, give me a call. Or any of the old Love Doctor people that love the Love Doctors, give us a call. Love to talk to you. So let's just start off with a couple of things that happened this week. Mike and I and Ross and Trident Title, we all had a bunch of closings over the last week or so. And I wanted to talk about some of them because I felt there were a lot of teachable moments in today's market. And I guess the first one I'd like to start with is Danny and Lynn. And the reason why I want to start off with them is because they had like so many different things happen through their buying process, right?
Yeah,
Mike, they were first-time home buyers.
First-time home buyers, and we're making a significant move geographically, right? Coming from
South Broward
down in Broward to up here to Palm Beach. And they went through a lot of what you can go through on a transaction, including including where it just doesn't go right and it can't continue, right?
Yeah, and
because they had two homes, right? The first one didn't work out, and the second one ended up being exactly right.
Yep, and that it just proves our saying. I tell people a lot, and they don't always believe it because they think it's kind of woo-woo. But, I say, if it doesn't work out with the house, it's really not meant to be. And you're going to probably get a house that you love even better than the house that you didn't get.
It usually
It comes out that
Yeah.
time a lot, and it definitely came out like that this time. And it was so funny. The first deal that fell apart, through the whole process, I was still working with both customers. I was working as the listing agent for the deal that Danny and Lynn backed out of. And then I was also working with Danny and Lynn to find a new home once they didn't want that first home. And both the seller and the buyers were asking about the other side, saying, how are they doing? I hope everything's okay with them. So they didn't leave in any, like, it wasn't like you hear a deal falls apart and you think there's a lot of anger and stuff. It wasn't like that this time. And I really feel like part of the reason why both of them had such a good experience in their process, or such good success at the end of their deal, is because of the way they handled the problems that they had. They didn't like go off and go crazy or anything like that. They were just very calm about the whole thing and looked at it.
I think, so let's just talk inspections in general. So sometimes the whole purpose of the inspection is to kind of,
let's set the foundation, because people don't really know. Okay, so what happened was Danny and Lynn came to us and they were trying to buy a house with a warehouse. Danny owns a business down in Broward. He would like to save the money on that, so he was trying to find a home for his family, a long-time home. He has 2 beautiful young kids, beautiful wife, and he wanted to make sure that he had a place, like a compound, that he could raise his family and run his business out at the same time. And he ended up calling on one of the ads that we had for a listing that we had in the acreage that was a small 2-bedroom, 2-bath home with a gigantic warehouse. It was 2,000 square feet. We talked about it on the air several times. And then Danny was very interested in the house, but Lynn wasn't really crazy about the house. Danny was more interested about the lot,
the shop,
and the shop. The shop was everything. And he's like, we could deal with the house later. But Lynn was like, we got to
live in the house now. So
we got to live in the house now. And it was smaller than the house they were living in, and their family was growing, and the kids were growing up. They were like young kids, and they're going to need more space. So we got him over to Mike, and then Mike explored with them a construction loan. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, or what we'll call a renovation loan. So basically, the idea is that you buy a house, but it needs to be upgraded. Maybe it needs to be expanded, needs to be remodeled. And so are you able to use a loan to both acquire the property and then also fix up the property? And the answer to that is yes. There are renovation loans out there that essentially, it's like you have the acquisition cost, the purchase price of the home, and then you have financing on top of that to do the renos.
So is that considered one loan, or are they two?
And it ends up, it's one loan. So it's a one, 30-year fixed rates conventional loan. You could do FHA as well, the 203K program. And oftentimes the challenge is being able to buy the home low enough so that there's space for the renovation budget, right? Because you can't just
within the value,
within the what they call the after improved value. Right. So once all these projected renovations are done, what's the value of the home going to be? And it's tricky, right? This is a tricky loan to get the numbers right on, because just because a home like for you isn't suitable for you, right? It needs to be fixed up. That doesn't mean necessarily that it's way undervalued for the neighborhood, right? So you're kind of having to predict, well, what's the home worth right now? Are you getting it for that number or lower, right? And then what's the home going to be worth after you improve it? And you don't often get like dollar for dollar. Like if I spend, Jim, $100,000 in renovations, that doesn't necessarily give me $100,000 in value of the home, right? Because it's just, putting on a new roof, it costs a lot, but you're not going to get, it's not worth that in the value in the market, because the roof's a roof, right? And appraisal will tell you, if the roof is sound, you're not going to get a big dump. Even if you put, $40,000 on a new metal roof, that doesn't automatically increase the value of the home that much. So it's tricky to find that. But I think we had that with this home.
And we spent weeks. I mean, we went through weeks and weeks of research. You and me, the buyer, and Danny, and you and me, we spent weeks and weeks going through this. Really, it was difficult. They were first-time home buyers too. Now, luckily, Danny had some contractors friends.
There were some advantages to being able to do it, and maybe a little bit more reasonable budget than someone who wasn't in the field, kind of didn't have good contacts, reliable contractors, things like that. So, but it's remember, Jim, our goal is to get to the finish line and have everyone as happy as possible, right? And like, you want everyone's happy. No, I mean, sometimes there's a little bit give and take through these things, but you have to. So we spent a lot of time trying to understand what was going to be within the parameters of the financing, like getting the loan approved, right? And we make that effort because there's a lot on the line for people, and they're relying on us as a professionals, right? So we're doing exactly what we need to do to kind of predict where we're going to land and what the limits of what can be done. And that renovation piece is kind of a mystery point, right? Because you really don't know until you figure out, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to add a bedroom. We're going to redo the roof, redo the kitchen, and you work up all of that budget, and then it's like, oh, that's a pretty big number. Do we need to scale back, or what else can we do?
This was an involved one, because this wasn't just, we're going to rip out the kitchen and put in a new kitchen and put some flooring in, or we're going to put a roof on. This was, we're adding like a third more to the house than already exists.
Yeah.
So they had to pour new foundation, new footers, build new footers, new foundation, tie in the roof line to the old roof line.
Yep.
There was a lot involved in what they were trying to do, but they were trying to make it work. And so we got to the point where we all felt comfortable. It took weeks, and the seller was very giving about giving them as much time as they needed, because the seller really liked the family, and she really wanted a young family to buy the house. It made her feel good about that. So she was willing to wait to have this family try to do it. But then what happened was, we got to the inspection. We felt it was good enough for the construction numbers, to go ahead and do the inspection.
Yeah. And just so, like, on that point in particular, so some of these things you're going to, as a buyer, you're going to spend money, and it's professionals are doing work. So the home inspection, the appraisal are very two examples of where you're going to be paying for that. And regardless of whether you close or not, you're not going to get that money back, right? Because somebody's doing work, they're going to get paid for the work. So we're always conscious of, if you don't have to spend money, let's do this in a step-by-step process, so that we're not, wasting, $600, $700, $800, $1,000, and you're not going to recover that if you don't close. So we're doing all this legwork on the building part of it, the renovation part of it, before they've even spent money on the home inspection to start. And that's okay. We did that intentionally.
Right, because we wanted to save the buyer money in case the construction was too much for the value of the home after improved value of the home, and we couldn't do the loan.
Right.
So we wanted to make sure, you and I discussed this with the buyer. We said, why don't we find out if you can get the loan first for real? And then we'll just, then we'll get into the inspection period.
And kind of like a simple way to think about those numbers is, let's say that the predicted after improved value is $700,000, right? As an example. But if your renovation budget is $300,000, well, you need to acquire the property for $400,000. Right? If your renovation budget is $200,000, you need to acquire it for $500,000. And so that's the balance that you're trying to find, because you have to not only get the home, the acquisition or the purchase price sufficiently below, you also have to convince the seller that that's the current value of the home, right? Because the seller has to be like, well, wait a second.
And that happened with us too, because originally we were going to put the house on the market at a higher price. And then we talked to AJ from Experienced Appraisers.
Sure. AJ was really helpful.
Yep. And AJ really kind of told us that he felt we were overshooting a little bit. And that he actually gave us some comps. AJ's awesome. So I went back to the owner before we even put it on the market. And I said, I think we need to adjust the price before we put it on the market, because I'm not sure we're going to get what we needed. AJ was way closer to the appraised value than I was. I'm being real about that.
Okay.
So we listened to AJ, and that ended up working. It came in right kind of where AJ thought it was. There was a bracket, and he was right in the middle of the price was right in the middle of that bracket.
Yeah.
Which was pretty good. But then we got through the loan part where we felt kind of comfortable that everything was going to work on that.
We had a workable plan.
So the next step was we had to do the the inspection. And when you do an inspection on most homes, if it's on public sewer and public sewer and water, city water and public sewer and all that, usually the inspection is pretty straightforward unless there's something unusual with the house. you're inspecting all the electrical and the plumbing and the structural of the house, and then, making sure everything's functioning well inside the house. But out in the acreage, you have usually a couple extra inspections that you might want to do. Number one, if you're buying a house with the pool, you should always do a pool inspection. And a lot of people don't want to.
Does it involve swimming in the pool, or
yeah,
is it
yeah.
hang
Bring
out
me
for an
over.
afternoon?
Yeah, hang out with the cocktail.
Right.
You have to have the painted. Oh, I almost said you have to have the daiquiri.
What did you almost
the
say?
other word? I almost said the other. You know what I'm talking about?
The colada?
The colada, but they call it a pain in the what.
Oh,
They mix strawberry daiquiri with the pina colada,
That's a
and they
Miami
call
Vice.
it a pain in really. I didn't know. Sorry, man.
I mean,
got dumped
no,
twice.
you hear
can't cuss in any language.
is
I
that
can't
true?
say-
Yeah, you can't say a Spanish.
What
cuss.
if it's a technical what if that's the official,
Well, what about like bloody in England?
Well, what
oh yeah.
all right, so here's one that we never really got an answer on, so we always aired on caution. But that show, Ships Creek.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
but
yep,
the
yep,
real,
yep,
Yeah.
the real
Their
word.
last name.
I mean, it's their name, right?
Yeah.
And it's not the cuss word, but if you say it on air, I mean, is it a problem or not? We never really got a solid answer on that, so we just never said it.
Yeah, that would
it
make
probably
sense.
goes
yeah.
to intent.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
what's your intention there?
Which is really how it should be, and it should be okay. You can say it because that is the
Right.
name, and that's not it. So,
It's like
and that falls back. We were talking about it I think the last week when we were, the
Mhm.
delay and everything that kind of came up in our conversation, and it's like there are certain words, like I can call Mike a dick.
Mhm.
You're acting like a dick today,
or Richard Nixon.
and I can say that all day long and not a problem. But if I reference the male body part, now I'm in violation of the FCC.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, is that stupid or what?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. It's crazy. It is. It's
Well,
crazy.
If
So
you
anyway.
if you think of it as the word jerk,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Then,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So-
So I've got dumped
Okay.
twice in the last month, and I haven't been dumped in like 12 years. So sorry, I'm gonna make sure I'm not. I'm
yeah,
trying
you
to
better
keep.
stop
I'm
thinking
trying
about
to
drinking.
keep Jimmy worth his money. Right?
That's all
He's
right.
got
I've got the
iHeart's
dump
got a
button right
deal.
here
Yep.
too.
So,
You got it
so
too.
yeah. Oh,
What happens
forgot
when I
about
hit that, Jimmy? We lose for 10 seconds?
It does the same thing. It drops out 8 seconds.
8 seconds.
Well, that's a lot. So
What?
So getting back to the inspection, so like a pool inspection can cost as much as the regular inspection for the house, almost the same amount, and a lot of people are not sure they want to do that. And most inspectors, if you just pay the basic price, they'll check the pool pump and stuff to make sure it's not leaking and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not going to make sure the pool's
Holding
has any
water.
kind of leaking or
Mhm.
anything. The leaking is what you're really, the shell, to me, the shell and the pipes that wrap around the pool underground. Those are the two big things that are super expensive. I'm not a pool expert, but
Yeah.
those are the things I see pop up that are the biggest problems.
And there's how difficult is it to tell? I mean, obviously if the water level's going down, that's a problem. But like in the Florida heat, for example,
evaporation.
you'll lose water that way
Well,
too.
there's a bucket test. You could do this bucket test for free, but that isn't like foolproof. And if you're buying a house, what I always say is like it's worth the inspection, because if you have a big problem, it's going to cost way more than the inspection. You want to negotiate it now with the seller than
Yeah.
pulling the money out of your pocket because you didn't pay for an inspection.
That's actually maybe
later.
a good overall topic. So you get a home with a lot of stuff. So you got your home inspection, pool inspection. So you're out in the acreage. So it's
Septic.
septic. Do you inspect the well too? Is like a well water inspection?
I call it the slime test. But what you do is so this house didn't have a pool, but normally, pool inspection would be something. Now the next thing would be if you have a well. So if you're on well and you're drinking the water from the well, not if you're using it just for your irrigation, but if you're actually using it for drinking water, you really should do what I call the slime test. It's a very non-technical term, but basically they're going and checking your faucets and testing the water in there to make sure that there's no bacteria and other stuff in there.
Yep.
And if there is, it's usually a pretty easily fix. You just take this chemical and you dump it into the well outside where the well is,
Oh,
and you wait 24 hours and you come back and you test it again. And It always passes. I don't know the magic behind that, but it always passes after you do that. But not doing that test, you're basically drinking stuff you shouldn't be drinking, even if you have a filter. All these houses out there usually have some type of water softening system or filtration system to take the iron out.
Yep.
So slime test would be really important to do because you don't want to be drinking gunky water. And the good news is, if that is a problem, more times than not, it's couple $100 to fix. It's not a big ticket item unless the well failed or something. Now, the next thing is, and this is the part that happened in real life with Danny and the homeowner for this house, is that there was a septic tank. And the costs for Danny through this process were higher than most homeowners because they had to deal with the type of things for the construction loan. So he knew that there would be extra costs in securing the loan than a normal house, because there were going to be more inspections and things after he bought the home in order to get the money for the construction. Right, Mike?
Yeah.
Am I right about that?
Yeah. If you're thinking like, well, how much money do I need to budget before we close, that I have to spend before we close? One of them's like your earnest money deposit on the contract. You got to put that money in. But yeah, paying for inspections, and sometimes it could be, maybe you're budgeting $1,000 total for appraisal and inspections. Well, what if it's 2,000, right? Because you have these additional. Yeah.
And it can be with all these extra tests, but it's worth it. So he didn't want to do the septic test. And I was like,
it's probably what, $500?
Yeah, it's almost the same amount as the whole house inspection. And that's why he didn't want to do it. And they're first-time home buyers, right? So, and even if they weren't first-time home buyers, I'd say the same thing if somebody told me no, but they especially don't know any better because they've never done it before.
Sure.
So I was like,
you don't go through the process, and there's a lot of costs that kind of come in there, creep in there. You don't know, think about. How about an architect in that particular case?
Yeah, exactly.
They had
at some point. Sure.
Yeah, that was going to happen. That's why he was trying to reduce the cost for the house, because his attitude was, I'm ripping apart the house anyway. What difference does it make?
Okay.
But I was like, no, but not the septic tank. The septic tank's going to stay there. So what happens if that failed? And he's like, well, what are the chances? I go, well, I don't know what the chances are, but do you want to take any chance? Because that could, and I didn't know how much septic systems were. And I threw out a number. I was like, that could be a $15,000 complete replacement with the drain field and septic tank. You just don't know.
How close is that number?
It was actually high.
Okay.
That number came out high. So what happened was, I think that people could tell, the septic tank tests failed. And the reason why it failed, usually it's failed because of the drain field. And the drain field is the area that when the stuff comes out of the septic tank after it's been processed in the septic tank to decompose, it goes out as slush basically into your drain field. And that's how it works.
Pretty much.
Why are you doing that? Why are you guys saying that?
Because what happens is the
stuff goes in the tank.
Yeah,
it
the
falls
solids,
to the bottom.
The solids settle to the bottom.
And then the slush, the fluid, the leftover fluid at the top of the tank, that gets pushed out.
So it's just the fluid. Yeah, so all the solids just stay in the tank.
Yeah.
And then the fluid, as it's, fills up the tank, has an exit at the top of the tank. The same way it enters, same level, like, the level of it entering is about the same level it's exiting.
Right.
So it's basically the drain field is a way for all your liquid, the liquid portion of your waste, to just seep out into the ground.
And there's a series of pipes and gravel and other stuff in order to make it drain well. And that stuff can get clogged up. That's usually where it fails, is the pipes get clogged, or or grass roots
or grass
stuff
roots
will grow into it. Or you drive over your septic tank field,
crush
your
one
drain
of
field,
those things.
and you compact it, and it has no more
or
percolation.
the soil just gets so saturated that it can't take any more liquid.
It's clogged up.
Yeah.
So that's what normally happens. But in this case, cracked septic tank.
So the fluid is not going to the drain field. It's just seeping out
wherever
around
it wants to go. It's going free. It's going free wherever it wants to go. And there were multiple cracks, and it wasn't fixable. And I never had to deal with the replacement of septic tank.
Was it
before.
one of those like poured concrete boxes?
Yeah, sometimes they're fiberglass. From what I understand, they're fiberglass, plastic, or concrete. This was concrete.
Yeah.
There were so many cracks. I mean, I don't think you're going to be patching a septic tank anyway, but it needed to be ripped out. Now, the drain field was okay.
That's good news.
So the septic tank forget how much it was, but I think it was only like 3,500.
Just to
something
get
like
a
that.
replacement,
Mm-hmm.
pop it in,
And thank you, Danny
or plop it
Septic.
in.
Yeah, Danny Septic did the job. They were very professional.
So that happened. So they didn't end up proceeding with this, but the septic tank work was done anyway.
Right.
So the homeowner who was selling decided this is going to be something we got to deal with no matter what.
And
that's nice.
And that wasn't the only thing, because not only did we have a bad septic tank, but the warehouse that Danny was putting all of his hopes and dreams into, and that's why he wanted the property. The electrical in the warehouse was not permitted. And not only was it not permitted, but they didn't do it right. They used wrong wiring and they wired the warehouse, which had 200 amp service, over to the house, but they only used a 150 amp panel. And the wiring from the house to the warehouse was not the proper gauge. So the whole thing was a complete mess. And so now that warehouse became not valuable to the buyer because he couldn't use this heavy duty electrical equipment he needed.
So he needed to get it up to a certain level of
so then it became really
service.
bad, because now we have a first time home buyer that really, really wanted the house. The wife wasn't so crazy about it. The husband wanted it. We had some bad inspection stuff. They spent a lot of time and effort to make all this happen.
And some money.
And like, where the big question became, were they in too deep, where they just needed to keep plowing forward, or maybe it was better to back away.
Right.
So I said right away, maybe we should start. And actually, they might have brought it up, and I agreed with them because I was going to bring it up to them. And they said, while we were trying to decide what to do, the first time home buyer said, maybe we should look at other properties. And
is there anything else out there?
And I said, I really think that's a good idea for you guys, because you haven't looked at enough properties out there as first-time home buyers.
Mm-hmm.
The seller was okay that we were going to shop around. So what we decided was the seller and the buyer agreed to stay in contract, even though we weren't sure we were going to continue with the contract. And then the seller was going to fix the septic tank and the electric. And then the buyer was going to look for properties, and then we'd figure out what was going to happen by the time the smoke cleared, right?
Yeah.
It was pretty amazing that these two sides were not combative at all.
Yeah, because it can get contentious.
It could get very bad, and it wasn't like that at all. It was the smoothest. Everybody was very reasonable.
Yeah, and I think when you're, one of the big jobs of your real estate agent is like putting the contract together and thinking about the deadlines for inspections and appraisals, and then your close date and your financing contingency. And once you sign that initial contract, Jimothy, it's like you're in contract. Like that's serious. These dates in here, and if for example you need to a little bit more time before you even start your home inspection, that should be pre-negotiated.
Sure.
If you're within your inspection window and you need to extend because there's some unresolved issues, you need to have professionals who are on top of that and extending those dates. Those dates are important, per your contractual obligations.
Yeah, very.
And there is money on the line if you can't fulfill your end of the bargain, so to speak. So, luckily Jim has Nancy, who's very on top of the dates and deadlines, and she'll say something like, hey, this inspection, I know you guys are working on this stuff. Inspection period expires in 4 days. Are you going to have it resolved by then, or do we need to extend?
Yep.
And if you're like not behind on that, you can usually negotiate. People are amicable about moving things. Like, hey, listen, we're not expiring tomorrow, right? It's not like midnight tonight. We're asking for. It's like it's a few days. We're still going through this potential sticky spots. What do you think about extending this so we have some more time to sort it out? And
that's exactly what happened here. So it was working out really well. We went out a couple of times to look for other properties, and then we found the one. I mean, they just lit up when they saw this house. They were just and it was so different than the house that they were going to buy.
It was much more suitable for their living situation, which the Lynn was like more like, we got to live here. Like we need this. And that's what they were planning to do with the renovations too, like get the home into something that worked for their family. But once they saw, hey, wait a second, we have these complications. Here's a home that's perfect. They're going to have to do all this extra work just to get livable. That might not suit our needs as much on the work side, the business side, but this is a house, this is where we're going to live, this is where we're going to raise our family.
This is a neighborhood where the parents take golf carts in the morning and drive their kids to school in golf carts. Like it's one of those kind of communities.
Okay.
And there's
Uphill
kids-
though, both ways.
Yeah, both ways.
At
Like,
least, but in the
and
golf
there's-
cart.
in the snow.
there's kids all over the place. Their kids, I think, are roughly 5 and 7. So this is going to be awesome for them. Tons of canals to go fishing in if you're young boys and go have fun. You could go bike riding and not be worried about the kids.
The school system
The school-
matters, and a
Mhm.
lot of those things that you
And-
take into consideration as parents.
And there's nice parks around there. So it was like a really good lifestyle. And here's the best part. Out in the acreage, everybody's getting like basically an acre and a quarter. And the lot they have
Nice.
is situated where the house is situated. Plus, they got a pool in this house, a really nice pool.
Oh,
I love that pool. That pool.
now they
is
got to
awesome.
pay for a pool inspection.
Oh, and then they got with the water treatment system, they got a $10,000 water treatment system as part of the deal with the house. It had a brand new roof.
Okay.
So there were a lot of really good things on it. So now instead of dealing with the house like they were doing with the first house, what they decided was, we love the house. We'll probably fix it up a little bit, but then we'll put the building in later.
Right.
So he'll come in and put in
Kind
a
of the
metal
opposite.
building later,
Yeah.
and it'll be the opposite. And that way he could build the building the way he wants it to be, like for his business.
Right. It's going to suit his equipment and his needs.
But
right?
but the some of the teachable moments in that whole thing, inspections really do matter. And
Sure.
if they didn't do that, and they went through this whole thing, and they imagine if they put the addition on and everything, and then they started using the house, and then they found out they had the septic tank problem, and who knows what would have happened with the electric, right? Like, because the electric. So that turned all into a big thing. But Danny and Lynn closed on their new home just Thursday, so congratulations to them. The kids aren't going to see it till next week, so they haven't even seen their new home yet. Mike, I wanted to give a two to the horn to you. Because right at the last minute, you got them a little better deal on their interest rate than what we first started out with, correct?
Yeah. So we're able to. This was a little bit of a longer contract when they finally got into it. It was something, 2 months essentially to close. And I'm not sure if that was the sellers needed to do that or what it was.
The
But
sellers on Danny's the sellers wanted to close later.
yeah. So it was a little bit extended contract, and we're in a market like. What my advice to people is just lock in your loans like as soon as you can, just because it's so tumultuous. You don't know where we're going to be 2 months
the
from
interest
now.
rates?
Yeah, lock in
Yes.
the interest rate. And so they had been locked in about 2 months ago,
Mhm.
right? And so what's happened with the market since then? Well, we've had some incremental improvement from 2 months ago, right? It's like just we've seen it every week.
Right,
we
it
had
has.
3 weeks in a row, it was
the
down
last 2
2/10
months.
or whatever. So I was pretty aware. So our float down policy, essentially float down means that if the market goes sufficiently down, even though you're locked in, you may be able to take advantage of that downward movement. You're still protected from upward, but if it goes down and it goes down enough, right? We have parameters we're looking for. And once we're within 15 days of closing, we can look at doing a float down or what's called a rate renegotiation. So I was very aware with them that they may be able to take advantage of that. And kind of, I was watching it every day and we just weren't quite there. We weren't quite there. And then just last week, I think, so they closed on
Thursday.
yesterday or Thursday?
Thursday. Yeah, because Friday.
So on Tuesday, we finally got to that point where I was able to float them down essentially a quarter of a point on their interest rate. So they went a quarter of a point less, didn't cost them any money. It just, from one night to the next. And that's just because I was aware of it and I was watching it. And I had spent the, 2 weeks prior, pretty much every day, just kind of checking, like, are we there? Are we there? Are we there? And so luckily we got there. Turns out on Wednesday, maybe it would have gotten tiny bit better, but you pull the trigger as soon as I was able. So.
Well, what you're telling me, I'm going to talk about this later in the show about interest rates. And there was an article I read saying that if the most important thing to do right now is lock in your rate. I was going to ask you about that. So we're going to talk about that later in just a little bit.
Yeah, that's an interesting
concept that we need to talk about, or technique or tool, if you will. Okay, so that's what happened with Danny and Lynn. Congratulations. But I made them homeless. They're the ones I made homeless. So
well, how did you make them homeless if they bought a home?
So when we did the final walkthrough, the agent gave me one key to the house, and she said the other keys would be in the house when we close. Now, we're not supposed to give the keys to the homeowners, the new homeowners, until the house is, quote, funded. Funded means the money from the title company that came from whoever landed in the seller's bank account, right? Bank,
Is that what that means?
Confirmation that they get a confirmation that the seller's bank got the wire.
Really?
That's what funded is. No? That's what we can.
You know what?
consider
For
it.
me, funded means the title company is authorized to release funds.
Oh no! With us, you have to have the confirmation
That
it
it's
had
already
been sent
transferred.
and
So
it's landed
sellers-
in the bank account, not the bank account, but at the bank where the seller's getting their money.
Interesting.
Yeah, and if you don't have the confirmation number, you're not supposed to give the keys to the house, even though everybody signed, right? Because
Interesting.
it's not most houses on the MLS are possession at funding, not at closing. There's a difference, right?
I think I would have a quibble with if I got into it with somebody.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Blender's pretty tough on that.
Yeah, I think if I were a seller,
Mhm.
I would want to say until I got the money in my hand,
Right.
this thing ain't done.
Right.
But I think technically,
Not if you have in the contract possession at funding.
well, I'd have to.
You would argue what the funding is.
I would say that so that one of the title companies, so everyone, when you're doing a closing, you got a settlement agent or we call it a title company because they issue title insurance, and they also make sure that title is transferring, free and clear, essentially, right? A warrantable, they call it a warranty deed, which means the deed has transferred, ownership is transferred, and it's warranted against
any encumbrances.
Encumbrances, claims on title, and it should go back as far as the history books allow, right? Or record keeping.
I think it's like 80 years or something.
It's like before they started keeping track of who owns what, who knows? Like, what do you do there?
Yeah.
But so we call it title company. So one of the things, and I say, like, what are the things that the title company is doing for you? Well, one of them is they collect all the funds and then they disperse all the funds. So when they collecting the funds, like, Jim, you're the buyer, so your earnest money deposit, your down payment and closing costs, it's all going to the title company. The loan that you're getting, right? So the mortgage firm is sending a big fat wire to the title company, and then they're also dispersing. So they're paying the county, right? They're paying generally your homeowner's insurance. They'll cut that. They'll send that first year's premium.
Right.
They're paying the sellers, right? So for me, it's like once the title company has verified they have all the funds accounted for, and they have received permission from the lender to say what we call funding, like you're authorized to fund. To me, that means, and you have all your signed documents, you got a done deal.
Right.
That's the way I would think about that.
Yeah, and the way that we're taught as realtors is that you do have an option at closing. If you click at closing, then it's your way. Okay. But if you do it at funding means
sellers
not when the money is showing up in the seller's bank account, but the title company has proof that they sent it to the bank, because it's not up to the title company for the seller's bank to release the money to the seller. That's between them and their bank, right? So so how I made them homeless, though, is they were supposed to. So we got this one key, and I thought they had other keys, and that there was a bag of keys in the house, and they did mention that the people that left are real techies. So the garage door openers are all on apps on their phones, and they had like one of those electronic key for the front door, and they even had like the blinds on electric and everything in this house, right? So anyway, when we were leaving to go to closing, we did the final walkthrough, and they were there, and they went through the whole house and did the final walkthrough, checked all the checklists, and then we were going to the title company to close. Well, I locked the door, and I'm not allowed to give them the keys, until closing. So I have a responsibility not to give the keys until funding. So I took the keys with me, and I locked the door. So then we closed, we were funded, gave them the keys. They drove back to the house. An hour later, I get the call. Hey, Jim, we can't get in the house. The bottom lock doesn't open with the key you gave me. So I called the listing agent, and she says, yeah, we don't have a key to the bottom lock.
Oh.
So I only had the key to the top lock, right? So now there was no way to get into the house.
The bottom lock is just a little twisty knob. So you like twisted that before you walked out.
And I did. And I didn't think that I thought it was just double keyed.
Double key, same key.
Sure. Yeah. Well, nope. So I had a call, and this was another funny thing. I want to give a shout out. I didn't even think about this. So the agent told me I had a locksmith I was going to call. I was going to call locksmith because I was already in a different area, like far
Sure.
away.
Send
And I
in a
wanted to
pro.
get somebody out there fast, right? I wanted like done fast. So they told me about Wellington locksmith. I was going to go to a different locksmith company, but when I heard Wellington, I was like, oh, that's close. It's like 5:15. I don't even know if they're going to get out here today. I got to get this. I got to make this happen. So I call up the guy, and I found out later his name is Rohan. And I call up and I go, hey, I'm an agent from Keller Williams. I just made my buyers homeless.
Ah.
I actually told him, I go, just made them homeless. We don't have a key to get into the bottom lock. I'm the one that locked it. I didn't know any better. Can you help me? And he's like, oh man, all our guys are like totally slammed.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh, I totally understand. I know I'm calling you, late on a Thursday. And then he stops. He goes, wait a second. He goes, do you have a radio show?
Oh.
And
Nice.
I go, and I laughed. I go, yeah, I do. Feeling hopeful. Right.
He's like, finally, I'll leverage this.
And
play this
apparently-
card.
Yeah. And apparently I totally used the card, but apparently he knows Johnny C pretty well. And
Oh,
he
okay.
changed Johnny C's locks when
Oh,
I
okay.
sold his house. When I bought Johnny C his home, he went out and changed the locks. So he
Okay.
knew Johnny C. He's like, yeah, I'll try to help you. So he was all ready to go. And then the family worked all the windows a bunch of times. And then they got into one window, but then they found out it was the garage. And then the garage door was locked, so they could get in the garage
Sure.
but not in the house.
Okay.
Then they finally found a window they could jiggle open to get into the house for the regular
So
house.
they didn't need the locksmith.
So Rohan didn't need it. Then I called Rohan and I said, why don't you go over there and replace the lock for them? And so they can either double key it or whatever they need to do. So they have keys. I felt bad they didn't have all the keys. And the family said no right now. So, but
They're
thank
probably
you.
going to change their locks at some point anyway. A lot of people do that, right? Or rekey their locks.
Yeah, that would be very normal. So
Yeah.
Rohan, thank you so much. Wellington Locksmith. Okay. Awesome company. I really love their customer service. So thank you. And
Sounds like he might need some employees. Maybe hire some additional guys.
yeah,
or gals.
exactly. I kind of keep it busy. I couldn't handle the work. So anyway, thank you so much for trying to help us out on that. And we will be using you in the future. So teachable moments there. Really important that you do all the inspections if you're a buyer. Really, really important. So then what happened to my house now? Now I have a listing, right, that I was trying to sell to Danny and Lynn, and now the deal fell apart because they walked away.
That's right. It's your listing. So you were kind of, as far as tough negotiations go, that puts you in a...
Yeah, and that's the other thing. I had to negotiate for Danny and the seller, whose name is Lorraine.
Yeah.
So I had to work both of them together, right? So, and the good thing is because we were doing that construction loan, that made it so much easier having not a conflict of interest because legally you're allowed to work both sides in Florida.
Yeah.
Where you have to tell people you're working both sides and have them sign a document. But you have to let them know you're both working both sides. And the rules are if Mike and Jimmy are in a contract together and I'm the one trying to put the deal, if Mike is the seller and Mike says to me, hey, Jim, I have the house on the market at 500, but I'll take 475 right now. So get me 475 or higher and I'm taking it. And then I find Jimmy and Jimmy says, hey, I want to buy the house. How low is Mike willing to go? I can't tell Jimmy, hey, just turn in 475. I can't say. And I say, well, here are the comps, Jimmy, and here's all this stuff. And what do you think is a fair price you want to offer? Right? That's how I do it. And then Jimmy, let's say he says, let's turn in 460, but I don't want to lose this house, Jim. So I'll pay 500. Right. So now I know you're going to take 475 and Jim's doesn't want to lose the house. And that does happen in real life.
I was going to say, boy,
right?
How does that not be a conflict of interest?
Well, the reason why is I don't tell either side what's going on. Right. So what I do with you is say, well, turn in an offer that you think is fair. Then you turn in the 460 to Mike. Then Mike goes, I don't like this number. Right. And I go, then counter. Right. I tell him right away, counter. Right. Well, what should I counter at? I go, what would you like to counter at, Mike? And whatever Mike wants to counter at, that's what I'm going to give to Jimmy. And that's how we get the deal.
You just have to be very vigilant about performing each side as if you didn't have the other side's info, right? Like so the same way that he would deal with, let's say you were the buyer in general, Jimothy, he would say, hey, let's go in. Here's what I think's a fair offer. Hey, they countered at this. What do you think about that? Are you comfortable? Do you need to come in lower? Like you would have that conversation every single time. And the same thing on the sell side. And you would know kind of how low they would want to go. And you would want to get them something better than that, right? You're not going to drop to it. So you have those conversations all the time. Now you just have to be very regimented about keeping them separate.
Sure. Right? I call it the lockbox, right? You got to have it in the lockbox, in your vault, if you will, like that information in your vault. But so now I have a house that fell out of contract, has a broken septic system, has electrical in this gigantic warehouse that's the real value of the property.
Yeah.
That is basically has no electric now because it's not legal, right? And the AC was broken. The AC was shot, right?
Okay.
So on top of it, now we have no AC, basically a warehouse that's just a warehouse without any electric, which was the whole value of the warehouse to a certain extent. And now we have this major septic tank problem. So Lorraine is the owner of the property. She's a senior. She's retired. She was selling this house because of a passing of her son. So it was not fun for her to do this. She had to sell her son's property and get rid of all his personal belongings, not get rid of, but like deal with all the personal belongings in the house. And then she had this whole warehouse full of heavy duty metalworking equipment that she didn't even know, like gigantic lathes and stuff.
Yeah,
right?
the machine
and
shop.
Forklifts and all kinds of stuff. And here's this senior woman that has to deal with getting rid of all this and selling it and not knowing what the stuff is worth. And she had so many questions when she came to me because she didn't know what to do. She was overwhelmed. Somehow somebody said, why don't you call Jim? Jim, it'll be really helpful to you. So we met in August, Mike, last August.
Yeah.
And we didn't close on her house until Tuesday. So this Tuesday. So I spent a lot of time with her over the months without even going to market. We weren't even in market with Daniel and Lynn, I think, until January or February. So from August to basically February, I was just, and never signed an agreement with Lynn. We were just working together, trying to help her. I tried to help her get contractors that might want to buy the metal equipment, right? The metalworking equipment.
Yep.
Then when we found out we had these major inspections, I jumped in and really helped her out, like find all the reputable people she needed. She needed a reputable electrician that was going to be able to do it. We called a couple of them. And thank you, Anthony DeMarco, for DeMarco Electric. He did an excellent job for us.
Nice.
And she was very happy with the results at the end. And he really worked hard because he had to basically start from scratch from the electric. And he had two agencies he had to deal with. He had to deal with the building department for the governing agency that's in the area. But then he had to deal with FP&L. And that was very, very complicated to get both of them done on time. But he came through.
So before that home was sold, then eventually the electric was up to, and the outbuilding was up to code, and
yep, we fixed everything. So everything that had value again.
Okay.
So she put in the septic tank, and she also put in a brand new AC. So now we had a house that still needed to be fixed up, and it was small, but now we had a brand new AC, we had a brand new septic tank, and we had a functioning electric in the warehouse.
Nice.
So we put it back on the market, and when you know it, we found this buyer like 3 days later. He loved the property because let me tell you, that lot is gorgeous. I love that lot. You feel like you're in this own little tropical oasis.
Yeah.
Because all the mature landscaping
kind of on the boundaries of the lot.
You have no idea of any of your neighbors, and all the wind from the stuff coming through in the mature vegetation. You don't hear anything other than in your property.
That's nice.
And the other thing is that for a business owner or somebody who wanted to shop, there's an entrance on both sides of the property. So in the backyard, there was an entrance, and there was a front yard, there was an entrance. So it was awesome. So if you had a company, you could just go in the backyard, go directly to the warehouse, and keep the regular house completely separated from the rest of the place. So this guy loved it. And he goes, I don't even care about the house because that's what we're most worried about. And he says, I don't care about the house. We're just going to buy it because I want to put my 4 race cars in the warehouse.
It's a good spot.
And he loved the lot. And so he bought the house. So he bought it. It was so smooth. I think we closed in 17 days.
Yeah.
And he picked the title company, which normally we pick the title company in Palm Beach County. He picked it, so that means he paid those costs, so that saved Lorraine a little money. And we got more money from that guy than Daniel was going to pay Lorraine in the at the
As
beginning.
far as that purchase price. Okay.
So she was happy. She's very satisfied. She was so happy that
And
Daniel
that one's
and Lynn-
done, right? It's
and,
closed?
Yeah, we closed that on Tuesday.
You're not
and Lynn
knocking
on
on
Thursday.
wood. It's done.
No, these are done.
Yeah.
So, and Lorraine was just as happy for Daniel and Lynn that they were closing that week. And
Good.
Daniel and Lynn were so happy that Lorraine closed on her house and that she got a price that was even better than what they were offering.
Good stuff.
So that was like just a really awesome thing. And that's because all of us worked really hard together. It was you and me, and we had Ross involved in that deal and tried it. We didn't have Trident. We had Trident, but then we had to take them away because the other people paid. But we had the whole Florida
AJ.
Talk real estate team. AJ for the appraiser. So thank you so much, the whole team, for helping out everybody. It makes a big difference. Let's take a break right now because my computer's about to die. And on the backside, we're going to talk a little bit about the economy. And we're also going to talk about why it's a great time to be a buyer. We're going to give a real life example of Matt and Adina, who just got a great deal on a closing that Mike did with me. And we're going to talk about why it's a great time to be a buyer in today's market.
And Magali, she posted a question about locking in an interest rate on a home equity line of credit. So we can talk
that's
about
interesting. I didn't even know you could do that. So
That's
we're gonna
what
talk
she's
about that.
asking.
Yeah, that's a good one, Magali. Okay, guys, we'll take a break. We'll come right back.
If you have a question or a comment, call the show 877-927-6969. You got a question about a HELOC like we do here in the chat? Give us a call, 877-927-6969. We'll be back on the other side of this break on Real Radio.
We're everywhere you need to be. Find your favorite show at realradio921.com. Here's what's happening with the weather on Real Radio.
I'm CBS 12 meteorologist Charlotte Carl. Those temperatures are continuing to climb. We will find our afternoon highs in the mid and upper 80s for today, feeling closer to 90 degrees with the humidity. Winds are much calmer than yesterday, but you still want to exercise caution out on the boat or if you're heading to the beach today, because we do have a relatively strong southeaster.
This report is sponsored by Compassion International.
Every day, a child in poverty waits for a sponsor is another day of hopelessness. There are thousands of kids who've been waiting over a year. End their wait. Sponsor a child with compassion today. Just text the word radio to 83393.
Hey, it's your boy Johnny C here, host of Florida Talk Real Estate. They're tops when it comes to helping people buy and sell houses. But Florida Talk Real Estate is so much more than that. For 5 years, I've watched these guys help thousands of our listeners with any real estate need. They couldn't do it without their sponsors, who are experts in their fields. Check it out. Jim DePola, powered by Keller Williams Realty. Their team specializes in helping people sell their house for top dollar, and buyers get great deals on the purchase of their home. That's what they did for me and my family, and I couldn't be happier that I hired them for my real estate transaction. Mike Rauch from the mortgage firm is one of our favorite guests on the show, and he is the mortgage guy. Whether you're looking for a refi or a mortgage to purchase a new home, Mike Rauch will get you the answers you need. The mortgage firm is licensed to do loans in Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, and Georgia, and they have local offices that cover all of South Florida. So if you're thinking about a refi or a new mortgage, go to the mortgage guy, Mike Rauch, and find out what he can do for you. The Mortgage Firm, Inc., NMLS 189233, Florida license MLD 78, equal housing lender. The law office of Paul A. Krasker has been specializing in real estate law for nearly 25 years and has the professional team you need. Upside down with your house, Paul's team can help you conduct short sales, loan modifications, even if you're behind on payments. They also help you with foreclosure defense and bankruptcy. They can even help you get a student loan modification and repair your credit to get the score you need. Paul's full service team has helped thousands of our listeners, and they can help you too. Trident Title LLC is the largest privately owned title company in Florida. When you need a title company to complete a refi, home purchase, or sale, Trident Title has got you covered. Not only do they offer competitive pricing, Trident Title has attorneys on staff to make sure if you have bumps in the road declaring title that you can get the job done. Beware, not all title companies in Florida have attorneys on staff. Trident Title does and complies with all the new federal regulations released last year. Ross Camaronets, owner of Brightway Insurance, has been helping our listeners get great rates on homeowners insurance plans. Haven't checked your homeowners insurance policy in a while? This is a great way to help reduce your monthly mortgage payment. Ross can also help with renters and auto insurance. Ross is only a phone call away and can usually get the answers you need same day.
Call Ross today at 561-425-6228 or drop by his office at 873 Donald Ross Road in Juno Beach.
So now you know why I'm happy to be part of the Florida Talk Real Estate Show, the longest running real estate show in Florida. And all these sponsors are just a phone call or a click away. Just call 888-973-7828. That's 888-973-7828. Or go to floridatalkrealestate.com. That's floridatalkrealestate.com. And don't forget to use the most accurate search engine to find your new home or ask for a free home valuation because floridatalkrealestate.com has you covered. That's floridatalkrealestate.com.
From the Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys Studios.
Have you been in an accident? Call Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys at 1-800-747-FREE.
That's 1-800-747-3733.
Real Radio 92.1 is WZZR West Palm Beach, an iHeartRadio station.
Make us the #1 preset on your car radio and on the free new and improved iHeartRadio app. Listen for all your music, radio, and podcasts. Free never sounded so good. This is Florida Talk Real Estate with Jim Paola and Johnny C. Got a question for the show? Call us live at 1-877-927-6969.
Hey, this is Jim DePola from the Florida Talk Real Estate Radio Show, and I was typing in stuff to our Facebook and YouTube page and forgot that I'm Johnny C today.
That's right.
Johnny C is not here, so this is Jimmy D all day, well, at least for the next hour or so. And we've got Mike Rauch from the mortgage firm.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Hello, South Florida audience.
And, of course, we've got Jimothy, the producer extraordinaire. How are you doing today, Jimothy?
Hello. Doing mighty fine. I hope you gentlemen are as well.
Yes. And just checking in. Let me just finish writing that. We were talking about some of the teachable moments of some of our closings. And one of the things I want to talk about is why it's a great time to be a buyer in today's market. There really are a lot of positives. I know some people are going to be like rolling their eyes listening to this, but I mean, if you keep an open mind, you're going to see that there's some real points to be made about this.
Right.
If you really want to buy a house, this is not for people that are trying to buy a house to make money, right? But if you're looking to buy a house and live in it, this is a really great time to do that compared to many of the years that we've been working it.
If you don't know any of the history of this show and you're just like, maybe you happened across us on the dial or you got a link for Facebook and this is the first time you're hearing it, you wouldn't be surprised that with a real estate agent host and a mortgage professional co-host and all the other fields that we're like, hey, it's a great time to be a buyer, right? Like, so caveat,
Exactly.
it's the agent and the loan guy talking to you about, hey, you need to get a loan. But I think the point you just made, Jim, is correct. Like, we're not telling you it's a great time to get into real estate or, hey, you got to get into this market. This market's so hot. It's a great investment opportunity. That is not what we're saying.
No.
What we're saying is if you are a buyer, meaning you have analyzed your situation and you've decided that it makes sense
of paying the landlord
not
rent,
stop renting,
don't want to live in my parents' house anymore,
move locations,
I'm
right?
tired of my roommate,
downsize, upsize, like for whatever reason, regardless of the market, it makes sense for you and your family to get into a new home. Then the question is it a good time now, or should I be waiting for something, or and I would say right now, Jim, it's better. It's the best time to be a buyer than it has been in recent
years.
memory. Yeah.
5 years or so.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm being real about that because when we're going to talk about this a little later, like, are we ever going to see 3% interest rates again? But that was 2021, right? And that was 4 years ago, right? And COVID started at the beginning of 2020.
And there's a lot of people out there
over the last 5 years when you could get those low interest rates in 2021, a little bit in 2022. When you can get those interest rates, you were competing against so many other people that the interest rates were almost offset by the crazy
increase
increase in the
Sure.
purchase price because of the bidding wars. You don't get that now. So I'm sorry, Mike, you were saying?
Well, I was just going to say, there's a lot of people out there who do have. Are you going to see them again? I don't. And for new loans, I don't know. I can't predict when that is going to happen, if ever. But there is a club out there. It's called the 3%er Club. It's not the 1%ers. It's the 3%ers, and they're like,
yeah, I know.
They've got mortgage rates in the 3%, right? Should we start a trend, like print some hats and some shirts, like the 3%?
I know the 3%er Club, and they should be proud they got that, because those are crazy, crazy low interest rates. Didn't even see when Eisenhower created all these longer term loans back in the day.
Yeah.
But
so why is it a good time to be a buyer?
Why is it a good time? Let me give you a real life example of somebody that just bought a home, a couple that just bought a home. So I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but Danny, I called in my newsletter that's coming out Monday. Some of the stuff that we're talking about on the show is going to be in the newsletter. One of it was Danny and Lynn congratulating them as first-time home buyers. And then I had Matt and Adina as last-time home buyers in a way. Because this is the home that they think is going to be their last home.
Sure.
They're seniors. Matt is a disabled veteran. Thank you for your service. And it was time for them to buy a home. And I helped them bail them out 10, 12 years ago when they were in trouble on their first home, and had them walk away debt-free from their house and sold their house. So that was sad.
Really full circle story just with you, right? With Florida Talk Real Estate. Pretty neat.
Can you imagine? We met them, and we had to help them get out of a house that they're really in big financial trouble with and could have broke them financially, and helped them with that. But that's not a happy time when you're helping somebody sell a home they don't want to sell, and they don't make any money selling it. All they get is away from the debt. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I didn't see that. We're going to get back into it in just a second, because I didn't see we had a call.
Did you want to wrap that, or?
I want to go back to. So what we're going to talk about is Matt and Adina's great buying experience, and what a great deal they got, and why you can too. But let's do the caller
well,
first.
In the meantime, we have Kelly checking in with us, and Kelly wanted to talk to. It's probably going to end up falling more to Mike here about maybe a possibly bad credit and how they can get into a home, even if you have a couple blips on your credit score. Kelly, welcome to Florida Talk Real Estate. I'll let you pose the question probably better than I just recapped it.
Well, good morning, everybody. The best of the best is here. I hope Johnny's doing well. He's definitely missed. But so my question is, you said about the 3%, which most people think 3% interest is high. Well, there's people like us out here, or me, who we're going to have a way higher interest rate because our credit isn't so good. And if somebody is willing to even let you purchase a home, it's going to be extraordinary. So my question is that there's things we can do to fix that and do that? And is it a silly thing to buy a house, say if I got approved for 17% interest? That's silly. But that's what some people may do just to get out of a bad situation.
So number one, I would say in general, leading up to getting any type of financing whatsoever, whether it's a car loan, a signature loan, unsecured loan, or a mortgage, you want your credit to be as high as possible, just in general, right? So the better the credit, the better the terms you're going to get on your loan. So interest rate, essentially, maybe cost and interest rate. So you want to be focused on getting your credit as high as possible within the time frame that you're targeting. There's various ways of optimizing credit, but the analogy I use a lot with people is you want as many A's on your report card as possible, Jim. And so if, even with your freshman year, you didn't pay attention, maybe got some D's and F's, like those aren't necessarily going to go away. So poor performance in the past isn't necessarily going to go away, but you can start to outweigh it with exemplary performance moving forward. Right. And adding as many A's to kind of outweigh those other
making
grades.
Sure you make all your payments on time, making sure that your balances on your credit card aren't too high, things like that.
You kind of shift your mindset from, using credit to buy stuff to using credit to optimize for credit score. And there's a strategy you can use there. So, some of that old stuff, if you have, poor performance in the past, it's time is what's required to fix that, time and positive credit. So that's one thing. So you want its credit as high as possible. Now, the second part of the question is, does it make sense to take, what you consider a penalty interest rate just in order to get into the home? And she had mentioned 17. You're not going to get crazy high thing unless you're doing like some sort of hard money loan. Even those are like 12%, 13%. So you want to be as close to what I would consider just market rates as possible. And definitely if you have lower credit, you might have a higher interest rate than somebody with excellent credit. Your mortgage insurance, if you're doing a low down payment, might be higher than it is with somebody with excellent credit. But I was going to say there are maybe certain programs, certain things that you can take advantage of that will kind of lessen that difference.
And tell me if I'm wrong. One of the things I would have mentioned to Kelly is that what the biggest problem that most people have is they don't know what credit score they're trying to achieve. They just feel like their credit score isn't adequate, right?
Yeah.
So here's the thing: if Kelly, in her example, let's say she's in the 500s, let's say, okay, really she only needs to get to 620, and then once that happens, she's locked in. It doesn't matter how high she gets past 620 if she uses an FHA loan.
Yeah, so that's exactly a very good point, Jim, which is your credit at the minimum needs to be to meet the minimum qualifying level. And then how much higher you can go and how much that would benefit you is going to depend on the loan program. So for FHA, you're not going to have a big difference, if any difference at all, between top tier credit and qualifying credit, like just qualifying credit.
Right. So if you have 640 or 850, you're going to get the same interest rate.
Yeah, exactly. And there might be some little
variance,
thresholds
right?
in there, but on a conventional, that's a very wide margin. So FHA interest rate's going to be pretty much the same. Mortgage insurance is going to be the same regardless. So the mortgage insurance, meaning the portion of your monthly payment that is paying for an insurance policy that protects the lender, doesn't protect you. Right. But anyway, so that's fixed on FHA. So it doesn't matter what your credit score. On a conventional loan, your credit is important not only to the 30-year, fixed interest rate, but also the mortgage insurance factor, which is expressed kind of as a percentage too. So not so important on FHA, could be a little bit more important on conventional. One of the questions when I'm doing a pre-approval for somebody is, what type of loan are we doing? That we're trying to get. Basically, you have to make a determination. What's the best loan program that's going to make the most sense for you? Sometimes it's based on credit. Sometimes it's down payment. Sometimes it's sources of income. Like there's all these factors go into are you doing FHA or are you doing conventional? Or are you doing a VA loan? Or are you doing something that's none of those? Right. So
that's the point we're trying to make, Kelly, is that instead of wondering what score you need to get, you need to find out what the score is you actually need and then go for it, right? Because when you don't have the goal, it's just kind of like this nebulous thing. My credit's not good, my credit's not good, but you don't know what to do about it. You don't even know where you need to go. And a lot of people we talk to, Mike, they think their credit's horrible and they can already qualify for the loan now, right? As far as credit score, they might not have the down payment or something.
Many times people aren't sure. There's definitely credit monitoring out there, so you can kind of have an idea, but they think they're worse than they are, and they think they can't qualify because of credit. And a lot of times they were like, no, your credit's fine for qualifying. Now you may have other challenges. Maybe it's cash, maybe it's debt to income, but credit check, right?
One of the things we did I'm sorry, Kelly, go ahead.
That's what's so hard is because there's 4 agencies out there giving you different numbers.
Nah.
So
it isn't that hard. You're making a lot of big things that are really nothing. As long as you make your payments on time and you reduce your debt and you know where your credit score is now, and like having Mike saying, this is what I would do to increase your score. You have a goal, because what you're trying to do now is you're guessing what the credit score companies are going to do with you and how they're going to interpret it. I just looked at mine recently because I'm going to be doing something soon. And my 3 credit scores have a variance of 40 points, right? Between the low and the high, right?
Yeah.
But I am in but if you bracket it, I kind of know where I'm at. Do you know what I mean?
It gives you a good idea. I mean, the reason you see different scores, they're just using different formula, right? They have just different formulas. There's probably 30 different formula that are used, and you can imagine certain variables are weighted in certain ways. And so it's like, what's the difference between a Google search and an Ask search or a Bing search, whatever, right? It's just different formulas. But my general advice to people is, like, let's say that I do a pre-approval, I pull the credit and the credit is not qualifying and I see certain things. Sometimes you can say, hey, we can attack these very quickly and get your scores up, or sometimes it takes a little bit longer. Like, hey, you have no A's. You need to establish some A's and keep them A's. So my advice to people who are in that situation is, number one, try to clean up as much as you can on the negative, and there's various ways to do that. But get your existing positive credit as positive as possible. And then I don't care what the score that you see is.
Right.
What I care is that you're using a tool so you can consistently monitor movement in the score. So if Credit Karma is telling you with this bureau, you got, 550, great. That's our benchmark, 550 today. I want you to optimize your positive credit, clean up your negative, do whatever we're doing, and then just watch that 550.
And it does move.
And if it's 560, well, guess what? We probably got 10 points positive movement regardless of the formula, right? 50 point, 6 months later, hey, I've gone from 550 to 600 on Credit Karma on this formula they're showing me. Great. We probably got about 50 points of positive movement. So what I'm interested in is telling you, hey, try to clean up these things. Sometimes means ignoring them, right? Take your existing positive and maybe we add some new positive. I want those to be as positive as possible, which is where your discipline comes in.
So here's the thing. Let's say that you have medical bills and that's screwing you up, right?
Sure.
And then people go out and they say, I got to pay those medical bills. Well, the medical bills really aren't counting as part of your credit score. So you're spending money that money that you owe.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with that part. But if you're doing it to build your credit, that isn't helping you at all.
That's right. And sometimes,
so you gotta know this stuff.
An old collection, something you were supposed to pay, you didn't pay, been sitting around for years. Well, do you do something with that?
Or maybe you paid down a credit card that you're using right now.
Chances are you do nothing. So the very first thing you can do, which is sometimes the hardest, is just optimize your existing credit and or add new credit and keep it optimized. Meaning it's optimized for credit score, not for spending, not for buying. And so that's the hardest because that's the change in spending habits. Cleaning up your negative stuff, maybe you don't do anything at all, or maybe you wait until you've optimized everything else and then figure out if there's money towards it. So
there's two basic answers to your question, Kelly, and thank you for being patient. Number one, call Mike. Right?
Like, seriously, great advice. Honestly.
Well, thank you. Because the first thing you would do is call Mike, right? You call us and we'll get you over to Mike, and Mike will give you a free consultation to figure out everything that's going on and tell you what to do.
And I'll usually follow up with some sort of email prescription, like, doctor's orders.
Right, exactly. And I use this. I'm a real life example of using Mike's advice to build my credit. About, I don't know, it was like 6 years ago. Wow, was it 9? Maybe it was 8 or 9 years ago. I don't remember. It was 8 or 9 years ago, and I unexpectedly needed to buy a house right away. And I wasn't prepared because I didn't set up. I'm self-employed like everybody else. I didn't really set up myself to buy the house, but I really needed to. So I went over to Mike, obviously, and he gave me all this advice. And my problem back then is that I had basically no credit. He was actually a little surprised because of my age, and I had no credit. And I was very proud of that because my attitude was I did everything cash because I got burned during the last financial
You had
crashes.
a financial philosophical shift, right? Where you're like, I'm not borrowing money anymore.
Yeah,
if I can't pay for it, I'm not paying.
I'm not buying it. And I sacrificed a lot to do that. But also I felt like after I got burned in the last economic crisis, I wasn't going to go through that ever again.
So when I pulled your report card, basically, I was like, Jim, did you ever even go to school? Right? You got nothing.
I know, I had
You've got no
nothing.
record.
Right. I was very proud. I was off the grid. I was so proud of myself. It
He's
worked.
like, I was homeschooled.
Yeah, and I was like,
homeschooled.
it worked, but now I had to buy a house. And I was like, oh, bummer. So what I ended up doing, Mike explained to me exactly what I needed to do. So I followed all of his steps. And in my case, not everybody's going to have the same results, but in my case, within 3 months, 90 days, I went from no credit at all to good enough credit. I think we use FHA, Mike. No, we use 5% conventional, I think.
When you bought,
I'm pretty sure we did 5% conventional. But we did a lower down payment thing on the house.
we probably did conventional with you guys because we were looking for a 1 year tax return analysis. Because that was the other part. So what part of it was like
prepared.
credit the other part was, well, you're self-employed, so you need to have certain amount of income
Yep.
on paper.
Yep.
Right? On paper income that we could use for qualifying. But,
So Mike told me I did exactly what Mike told me to do because I was highly motivated, and it went really smoothly. Now the second piece of advice number 1, call up Mike. It's free. You don't have to start going in with all these stupid credit repair companies that we've tried over and over again. They can work, but Mike's advice usually
They're
is
very expensive,
better.
by the way. These credit repair systems are very expensive.
And you have to do a lot. And with Mike,
No, but I'm saying the people who want to charge you, like,
yeah, but
I got a
you
quote
still
from a tax
they
agency,
charge you, but
$800.
they charge you, but they still want you to do work. You still have to do work. So you're not just throwing it over them, making it their problem. So even though you're throwing money on them, you still have to do the work. And most people don't. I know because I went through that. But the second thing, though, the second part, Kelly, is use a tool. Use Credit Karma, Experian app, whatever. When I got on Credit Karma, and Mike told me to do that. That was part of the thing. Jim, go get Credit Karma or something, some app like that, and use it and follow it because you're going to learn how your credit changes week by week, day by day. And I'm thinking, whatever, that stupid app I seen on TV. I got to tell you, that app was awesome. And I still use, even though it's 9 years later, I'm still using that app. And that's how I know I got a 40-point bracket right now.
Yeah.
And I know that isn't my real credit score, from that.
From the model that we're using when we do a mortgage pull, right? It's a different formula.
But it gives me a very clear idea of the range I'm in. Like, am I in good, excellent, or very good, or poor credit, or fair credit? I know exactly where I am at any moment.
It's almost like a game of what's the game, like hot and cold or whatever, right? So that these apps, they're just making you aware of what's happening with your credit. And of course, they're trying to sell, like, hey, we've got this credit card for you, and maybe that's appropriate for you. Maybe you do need to add a new credit card and use it the right way. But it's kind of like, are you on the right track? You're getting warmer, you're getting warmer, you're getting warmer, and you see these movements. So I love
learn from the movements. Like, after you pay down your credit card a little bit and you see the score go up, it's like, wow. And you see how much went up based on what you paid and your balance on that card compared to your limit. And you can actually see things. So then you can start just intuitively saying, hey, I'm going to make an extra payment right now and pay down this balance on a credit card because I got a little extra money. Let's go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
And just start slowly building up your credit. So those two things are the best things we could tell people that want to buy a house or aren't ready yet. Number 1, call Mike, get the advice of what to do to build up your credit. Number 2, get one of those apps and really start using them.
Yeah, I'll reinforce. So, and then I feel like I talk about it all the time, but it's really important. And it's part of our just philosophy, which is, we're not telling you that you should be doing this, but if it's right for you, you need to get things lined up so that when the opportunity presents itself, you are ready to take advantage of it. And so part of that is doing a pre-approval or having a consultation just to see, where do you stand from a credit perspective? Where do you stand from debt to income? Where do you stand from a cash perspective? And you have to kind of get all that lined up, and you could have that conversation, Jim. You and I could talk on the phone for 15 minutes. I get some documents from you and I'm like, boom, green light across the board. 1, 2, 3, you're good to go. Then you can sit back and wait for those stars to align. Maybe you talk to Jim and you start getting pinged on homes that meet your criteria. But the other result of that conversation could be like, hey, you're green light in these 2 areas, but this area you need a little bit of work. You got to focus your energy, your effort, your money, your attention into this because that's the only thing that you need help with. Or maybe you got to work in all 3 areas. But guess what? It might be a year, but if you sit down and you make a concerted effort. So I think, like, specifically with credit, the prescription is the analysis, and the prescriptions, although sometimes hard to hear and hard to face, that is the easy part. The discipline that it takes to, like, really change, especially if you're making a mind shift in how you're spending, like, that's the hard part, right? If you've, like, going from using credit cards for everything to now not using credit cards for everything, but using them very specifically in a very intentional way, that takes a change, right? Like, and that's oftentimes the hard part. So even if it's a 3-month, 6-month, 1-year plan, implementing the plan is oftentimes the difficult part of it for people.
I just want to wrap up with this, Kelly. This last thing is that one of the things I learned about working with Mike and going through that credit process and now, all the years later, is that doing everything that we just told you teaches you how credit is, and it kind of gives you more control about credit, because before I actually got all the coaching from Mike, I always felt like credit was totally out of my control. It happened to me, right? My credit score happened to me, either went up or down, but it wasn't, I had no real control of it. I know that sounds silly, but a lot of people, I think a lot of people feel like I do, or they just feel like they don't have control of it. And you actually have a lot of control. If you have a little knowledge, in these apps could really show you how your credit's affected. You cannot believe, I had to do a big purchase on one of my credit cards recently, and my score went down, and I was bummed out. And it's because my balance went higher. But I learned now not to freak out, because
Yeah, you turned an A into like a B.
yeah, and then what happened is that it made me be more conscious. I got to get that down so I can get my score up eventually, and not just kick it down the road. Well, I'll just carry it. I'll just carry it longer. Now I'm more like, hey, let's knock that out. And I'm seeing and when you see your score bounce back or even go higher, it makes you more motivated to keep doing it.
Yeah, I like that. And you can even see, maybe you have one card, and you can see, well, when I have my balance here, my scores are hovering around here. And when I have my balance down, balance to limit ratio down around here, my scores are hovering here. So you can actually use that and say, I don't need to do anything now, but maybe that month or two leading up before I'm really going to make my house hunt, begin the house hunting, that's when I'm going to target paying down that balance.
Exactly.
Right? So you can really get a feel for not the score, but the movement in the score with the various things that you're doing.
So Kelly, we want to talk about a couple other things before the show wraps up. So I really appreciate you calling in. I hope you like the information that we gave.
I appreciate it. And my analogy that I've come to this is I'm going to play my own credit like my own personal stock market.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
Stock. Yeah. I'm going to look at that. So that's how I'm going to invest stock. I'm going to buy stock in myself and try to fix my credit. And that's how I'm going to look at it. And I think that might be my little game and an easy way to kind of play it. So I appreciate you guys. You're amazing. Thank you for the wealth of information. And I hope I didn't waste y'all's time with my
No
question.
way. That's a good.
No, your
good
question.
topic.
A lot of people have the same exact question you have. So thank you for bringing it up so that we could share it with everybody.
Well, have a beautiful Saturday, and guess what? I'll hear you guys next weekend.
Okay, thanks, Kelly.
Bye.
Take care, Kelly.
Getting back to Matt and Adina when they bought their house, just to give you an idea about credit scores. So I had a short sale their house many years ago, and it was time to buy. And it was so nice at the closing table with Matt and Adina this week, because they said they don't know how many realtors came to them when they were interested in buying and said, hey, love to be your realtor. And both of them said, nope, we're going with Jim.
We got our guy.
Even though it was 10 years ago,
sure,
they never forgot. And I'm so grateful to them for that. They never forgot how hard we worked for them and how much we cared about their future as much as they were caring about their future, which is really hard to find people to do that when you're in trouble. And we were able to make it happen. So they got a really good deal on this house, and they got their house. I was thinking about it today, Mike, over 10%, just a little over 10% below the list price of the house, which is a pretty big deal because most houses in today's market are selling about 6% below.
Okay.
And we got 10% below. Now, it wasn't all I can't toot my horn that it was all us or anything, but it was some about the market, right? Some of it was about the market, and some of it was about negotiation.
Some of it was about appraised value.
Yep, that's what I was going to get to, right?
Yeah.
So the house was on the market. We're going to make up the numbers, but it's pretty much this. The ratios will be the same. So they were on the market, let's say, for $380, and we turned in an offer significantly lower than that, right? Let's just say it was like $350 or something like that, and they were at $380.
Because you. One thing that the real estate agent is thinking about is because we're going to do financing. There's going to be an appraisal. What are the chances this home's actually worth $380 in the eyes of an appraiser? And you're thinking about that when you're advising on realistic numbers, right? That's one of the things you're thinking about.
Yes, and the other thing is we kind of knew that the roof was not going to make it. We had a feeling the roof wasn't going to make it, so we knew the roof was coming. So they went in low, right? The buyers came in low. We came in low. And then they countered back, and the counter was kind of reasonable if the roof was okay. Okay.
Okay
the roof-
for insurance.
Yeah, no, the price was reasonable. Yeah, if it was okay for insurance, yes.
Okay.
So the price would have been reasonable if the roof was okay for insurance, but that was iffy. And when I say okay, it was because the house was nicely fixed up. It wasn't super Mac Daddy. It wasn't brand new everything, but it had a lot of upgrades. They broke out the kitchen and made an open floor plan.
Nice.
And they upgraded some of the bathrooms and stuff like that. So that was good. But the problem was I was worried when we were going back and forth that the house wasn't going to appraise. And I brought it up to the realtor, and the realtor said she was an appraiser for 20 years before she was before she was selling real estate, and that she felt very confident the house was going to appraise. And I said, I really feel like there are houses in this neighborhood that are selling at the price you're asking, but they're bigger model homes. Our house isn't that model. Our house is a different model in the neighborhood. And those homes are selling like 25, 30,000 less than the bigger models.
Yeah.
But you're asking the bigger model price. And her argument was where our house was fully, had a lot of upgrades, not fully upgraded.
Okay.
So we went into contract. We went into contract like 15, 20,000 below list. And then we did the inspection and found out the roof was at 5 years useful life, which means we could get insurance, but we knew that the next year Matt and Adina were probably going to have to put a new roof on the house. So
they're thinking about that with their inspection negotiations.
And like, do we really want to buy this house knowing that a roof's coming unless we can get the roof credit? So we went and got two roofers to come out. I went out there for Matt and Adina. We got two roofing companies through us that came out. They both gave us quotes. We were in the 20s for the roof, like low 20s. So then we came back to the owners and said, we don't want the house at this price. We want you to give us the roof or give us the credit for the roof. They didn't want to give us the full. They didn't want to put the roof on, but they didn't want to give us a full price drop at first. And we went back and forth, and we ended up getting the house for $40,000 less because, number one, the house did not appraise, right? The house appraised low. So that gave us an extra like 10, right? And then the other 30 we got from negotiations, 10, 15 maybe for the appraisal.
Yeah.
And the rest of it we got from negotiations about the roof. So they bought the house with the old roof, but they bought it at 10% below
the initial
list price. And they're really happy. They were so happy at the closing.
Yeah, this is one of those where, Jim, you do some pretty heavy negotiations based on inspection results. You kind of know beforehand, then you confirm it with inspections, and then you negotiate. And then the appraisal came in low after that. And you're like, this is for me and Jim. It's like, because we want things to go
smooth.
We don't want to have combative negotiations, right? Where people are thinking like, oh, they're getting over on me or vice versa, right? And so that's what we hope for. But then, of course, these things happen. And so this happened to be a VA loan. And then you get what's called the Tidewater notification, which is a part of the appraisal process, very specific to VA, unique to VA, where when they initiate Tidewater, that means, hey, we're going to be appraised below your purchase price. We're not going to tell you how far below. We're not going to tell you a number. Could be $1 below, could be, 50,000 below. But here's your opportunity to give me some more information, Mr. and Mrs. Real Estate Agent or sellers or buyers. And before I make my final determination, just send me over whatever information you think is pertinent that I may have missed or I may have included. Go ahead and send that over. And it's almost like,
I didn't even know what it was. This guy, this appraiser, he sends me a text, I think it was. I almost didn't want to click on it because it looked so scammy. And all it said was Tidewater rule invoked. And then it said BC. And I didn't know what BC stood for. That was the initials of the appraiser.
Yeah, so it's that
and I'm like, really? That's how you notify a person?
That's not how you do it.
Well, that's how he did it.
Right. So it's meant to go to, we basically have what we call SAR. What does that mean though? Anyway, it's
response.
The contact at the lender for communications with the appraiser. And it's not me, right? So I'm an LO. I'm kind of like an interested party to the transaction. So we have somebody who's third party, essentially, who's the main contact for the appraiser, and the appraiser is supposed to notify that person. So I don't know what went wrong there. I just know that Tidewater was invoked.
I thought it was a total scam. And then I was like, I wonder, I don't even know why I even cared. I really should have, normally I would just like, that's because I get so much scam stuff. But I actually Googled Tidewater roll, right? That's how I found out. And I go,
but we've talked about Tidewater before.
I didn't remember until I read the Google. And I was like, oh, that's what it means. I remember that. And I looked it up and it was the, saying it's
VAs.
about appraisal for VAs, not appraising.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I wanted to mention about that. So before I want to talk about disputing appraisals, but Matt and Nadina, they got a really, really good deal.
Yeah.
They were able to use VA financing. So they had 0% down payment because they're a VA. And then didn't they use VA, Mike? Right?
No, they definitely use VA, but when we say 0%, I'm always thinking of the intricacies. So we ended up, because it appraised significantly below the initial purchase price, there was negotiation that had to happen.
Right.
And one of those outcomes is meeting in the middle, meaning your price doesn't drop all the way to the appraised value. It's still a little bit above the appraised value. So with VA financing, and you're like borrowing, in this case, 100% of the value. So LTV, loan to value, is 100%. Well, when your price is slightly above the appraised value, you have to bring in that cash.
Right. You have to.
Right. So they're not quite doing it with zero down.
0%
because
they brought a little bit money.
They ended up somewhere in the middle, and so they were buying the home for a little bit above the appraised value, which is the V and LTV, which we can only borrow 100% of value. So they came in with a little down payment.
So the sellers were willing to negotiate a lot. They were motivated to, they took a 10% haircut of what they thought it was worth, right? And so could you have done that during the COVID phase? Pretty much not. And you would have been fighting with everybody else, but and this house was on the market 78 days. It wasn't like on the market 3 days.
Yeah, and I think the roof is something not everyone can sustain.
Understand.
Say, hey, wait a second, we're gonna probably need a new roof, let's say in the next 2 years. Can we buy this house? Can we put up the money required to buy the house and have money for a roof in 2 years? And so that's something not everyone is willing to go through or even able to consider.
So I wanted to go into,
but congrats to Matt and Nadina for sure.
Yeah, congrats to Matt and Nadina. I wanted to go into a little bit. Magali's asking a lot of questions on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you, Magali, about locking in rates and things like that. So my first thing is, I read an article yesterday because interest rates have been going down a little bit. I don't think they're going down dramatically, but we've seen a quarter point or so drop over the last 8 weeks. And the article I was reading yesterday, giving homeowners advice on buying homes in today's market, even if you haven't found your house but you're qualified for the loan, they're recommended locking in right now, even though you don't have your house yet. Like, you're qualified for a loan, you say, hey, Mike, I know the interest rates are pretty good right now. Let's lock it in.
So, it just so happens I've been hearing like radio advertising where this one lender is talking about locking in your loan before you're in contract.
Right.
Like,
I never heard of that before.
So I guess it's possible to do, Jim. The thing is, when you're locking in that early, lenders are exposed to a certain level of risk of market movement.
Right.
And lenders aren't typically set up to tolerate that kind of risk. So what they do is they mitigate it by locking you in early for, there's enough space in there for some risk to the lender, right? So when I hear somebody saying, we're going to lock you in before you even have a close date. Well, when you lock in a rate, you're locking in for a specific amount of time. 15-day lock, 30-day lock, 45-day lock, because you're basically saying, hey, we're going to lock in, we're going to protect against market movement between now and the time you actually close, which is when your promissory note is finalized. And so typically you need a close date in order to know how long to lock, right? If we got a 2-month close, we're going to lock for something approaching 60, 75 days, something like that. If we got a 30-day close, I'm going to lock it in, so I'm within a 30-day window. So if you have an unlimited time frame, like what do you think is really happening there? Is the lender really going to lock you in at today's rate and then have the risk of the market being up a quarter point, half a point between now and then? Well, no. So they're going to lock you in at something a little bit above today's rates, some padding for movement, right? So
okay.
I can't tell you that for sure. I
Right.
just know how it works. But
Right.
in general, so when like two philosophies on this, let's say normal, you're in a contract, you got a close date. So you know when you're closing, you know how long you need to lock. The question is, do you lock in your rate and protect against upward market movement, but also realize you can't necessarily take advantage of downward market movement? Or do you float, meaning you're not locked in, you have some prediction, some level of certainty that the rates are going to get better for you. If you had a prediction that rates are getting worse for you, of course you're locking in. But your
Right.
prediction is, I think, because of whatever, economic, political, the crystal ball, the magic 8 ball,
Mercury in
retrograde. My cousin's
Right.
brother is a
said-
market analyst,
Yeah.
and he's got this inside scoop, or like whatever, it is,
right.
you think your rate's going to get better and you want to float, say, until next week or until the week after that. Some of that is maybe predictable, like jobs reports coming out or the Fed's about to bump up, and but I would say in general, nobody can really predict that stuff with any level of accuracy. You could get lucky. So my general philosophy is
Let it ride.
lock in.
Oh,
No,
lock
not
it.
let it ride.
Lock it.
No, I
You
do not
can't go
let it
the other
ride.
way. Lock it.
No,
If
I
you're
don't let it
happy,
ride.
yeah.
I don't let it ride. Are you crazy?
Mike's
think
not
I wanna-
betting everything on black. I will.
How much? I don't have much hair to lose.
Just
So
the wheel
no.
right over
So
there.
don't let it ride. If you're happy with the rate that you got, you don't just
I
go ahead and lock
think
it
you
in.
just take what the market gives you
Yeah.
at the earliest opportunity. And if it moves significantly down, there's a rate renegotiation. There's a float down policy. So that's like had we talked about with Danny and Lynn earlier. So they were able to take advantage of float down. But let's say they had locked in, they had waited until the 15 days outside closing. Could they have gotten better even than the floated down rate? The answer is probably at that moment, yes. Had they risked 45 days of
Right,
floating
but you don't know
and
what would
hoping
have.
and
And we
hoping.
and you and I know that 45 days can be an eternity if
Oh.
we're on an upward trend for the
I mean-
real estate market. We've had 2 or 3 times in the last 3 years where interest rates went up 3/4 of a point to 1 point in like 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, you just said
Right.
we've had about 1/4 of a point over the last 8 weeks, which is right. Well, leading up to that 8 weeks, the 8 weeks prior to that,
Mhm.
we probably had a 1/2 a point
Right.
upward movement.
Yes, you're right. Yes,
Right. So it was like the
exactly.
exact opposite in that 2-month period.
The 52-week range as of today was 6.08 is the low, and the high was 722. The 722 was last May. The 608 was November, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
It's
So, but we've been hanging out at about 6.5, 6.66 now for about 18 months.
yeah.
That's kind of where the range has been. Now, has it gone as low as 6.08? Yeah. Has it gone as high as 722 in the last year? Yeah. But the average is 6.6. And right now, that's exactly where we are. So it isn't that we're in a high interest rate mode right now, and sellers are willing to drop their prices. So you can't even say, well, the prices are so high, the price is so high. Because sellers, if you find the right ones, they're motivated to adjust price to get the buyer if you find the right ones. And that's why those are 2 of the reasons why it's a great time to be a home buyer. But the third one is also there's so many people out there that could afford a mortgage payment but can't afford the down payment. Right.
So the cash.
And now we've got
let's talk. Hold on, because
Sure.
Magali was asking
I'm sorry.
just about the home equity products.
oh yeah, I forgot.
So
yes.
they got a first mortgage. It's in the 3%. They're not going to do a cash out refinance.
No way.
But they want to tap into their equity for whatever reason. Maybe they got a project in mind. Maybe they just want a security blanket. Maybe they got some debt they want to consolidate. Whatever reason, they want to tap into the equity of the home. A home equity product is a good way to do that. There's 2 types: home equity loan. I'll call it a HE loan, or home equity line of credit, a HELOC. Home equity line of credit is like a big fat credit card, right? So you're basically applying for Jimothy, $100,000 credit line against the equity in my home. I don't have a use for that right now, but I want it there. I want to be able to use it as needed, and I'll pay it back
as needed,
right?
as you use it.
And so you're paying interest on the portion of the loan that you use, the credit that you just think of it like a credit card.
So if you got it up to 100,000 and maybe you only use 20 of it.
Right, exactly.
You're paying the interest on 20, not 100.
Exactly.
Right.
Whereas a home equity loan, you're going to take it as one chunk and you're going to pay it back over time. So the home equity loan is more like your traditional mortgage. You'll have a fixed period of time and a fixed interest rate usually, right? So 20-year repayment, I'm at 7%, right? Fixed. Home equity line of credit, and this gets to Magali's question, which is, can you do a fixed interest rate on a home equity line of credit? I would say in general, Magali, it doesn't mean there's not some exotic products out there that you might be able to find. In general, those are variable rate loans. They're adjustable rates. And the reason for that is because you don't know how much you're borrowing. And when you borrow the money,
you don't know when you're paying it all back.
You don't know when you're paying it back.
Right.
It's just, I think it has to do with when you take the money, the market is different than when you applied for the loan, right? So the market is, that's why it's adjustable. So I would say most home equity lines of credit will have an adjustable rate mortgage, which means there's some like baseline, a starting point, and then there's a margin on top of that starting point. So there'll be some index that they're saying, hey, here's our baseline rate, and then we're going to put a margin on top. That's your rate.
So if you had a home equity loan, not line of credit,
yes,
could that be fixed?
Those are usually fixed because you're taking all the money at one time, and therefore it's
taking all the money.
Think of it like in the mortgage-backed security, it's almost like a fixed income return, right? So if it's like getting a social security check. So someone who owns that mortgage-backed security knows that they're going to be making 7% on that money for
every
this period of time, and it's very stable, secure product. So I'm not sure. Magali's kind of throwing in some stuff about their current ones on an adjustable rate. I'm not I'd have to get more details to be able to answer what she's looking at.
Magali, let's talk about this off air. If you're serious about it, you have real questions, let's get you over to Mike next week, and they'll get you the right answers. And we're not high pressure. We're just going to get you the right answers. You figure out what need to do. We're looking forward to it. So give us a call.
888-973-7828. 888-973-7828.
Thank you, Jimothy. I almost forgot the number.
Okay, so now the third pillar of the mortgage pre-approval, we haven't talked about debt to income, which is the second. So credit is the first one. Second one is the payment, what payment you qualify for. That's debt to income. The third one is
with the money.
How much cash do you need to buy a home? And Susan asked a question related to this.
Yeah, I saw this headline too.
Yeah, Palm Beach County is offering first-time home buyers up to $100,000 incentive. So let's talk about that because it's part of what we're
okay. I was going to bring this up next week, but I'm glad Susan brought up. And Susan, I'm so glad that you reached out through YouTube, because I was just thinking a couple weeks ago, I haven't seen Susan come in here in a while. I hope everything's okay with her. So I'm really glad to see you up there. We helped Susan buy a house a few years ago, like 5 years ago, out in the Lake Worth area. But Mike, the first we'll talk about the down payment. Yeah. So there's a lot of people out there that can afford a normal mortgage payment. When I say normal, like a payment they could afford for the type of house they want. But what they don't have is the money needed for the down payment and sometimes the closing costs. And there are ways around that. And in this market, another reason why it's a great time to be a buyer, we always say they could use the down payment assistance programs, right? So there's a whole bunch of them. One of these is the 100,000 one, which we'll talk about in a second. But there's what I call the Florida Bond Program. I don't know if that's right. Maybe I made it up in my head, but it's a $10,000 program where everybody that can qualify basically for a conforming loan and they're first-time home buyers under the definition, they can get $10,000 from the state of Florida. But there's a better program coming out this summer called the Hometown Heroes Program, where you can get up to 5% of the total loan value. And in that case, you could hypothetically get up to $35,000. But what I'm seeing is most people are capping out in the 20s, like the mid-20s.
Yeah.
Because when you get to a certain high purchase price,
there's income limits. So you have to be under a certain income threshold to qualify. So these are down payment assistance programs. Down payment assistance is essentially money that you can use towards your down payment, closing costs, basically your cash obligation. There's usually some level of strings attached to these things, but in general, it's going to help you with the cash requirements for buying a home. And so there's income limits. You have to be under a certain income threshold based on your household size and the county or area you're buying in.
But it's not that bad, really.
Hometown Heroes is the healthiest one. pretty expansive.
Mhm.
So the question is, like, if you're getting 35,000 is 5% of what number, right? And if you buying a house where your loan amount is that number, is the payment going to be one that you can afford and qualify for, and you're under the income threshold? So that's why you start to run into these limits, because essentially it's a pretty big loan amount to get 35,000,
Right, to get 35,000.
which is a pretty big payment. In order to qualify for that payment, you got to have pretty big income.
But
and is it under or over that
But
threshold?
we've seen a lot of people that we've worked with get 18,000,
in the 20s,
22,000, from the
25,000.
state. Yeah,
yes.
so we've seen that a lot. Now, so with those programs, you can also, depending, you have to have a good loan officer like Mike to make sure this goes through, but you also can get money from the sellers.
Sure.
So now you're getting money from the state and the sellers, and a lot of times you can get a big chunk of the money that you would normally need to buy the home from the program and the sellers. And you a lot of times can go into the house if you're renting and you're paying first last security. You can get very close to first last security to move into the new home. So if you're going to do a rental, why wouldn't you do the new home if you could afford it and you want to move and all that? You know, all that's still always
All
our
those
foundation
things.
is always there. But it gives you the opportunity. Oh, thank you. It gives you the opportunity to take advantage of these home programs. Because the Florida bond program has been around forever. We've been using that for 10 years.
Yeah.
But during COVID, the sellers weren't giving you money too. You would get the money from the state, but if you were going to the seller and say, "Hey, Mike, I want you to give me an extra $10,000 back," they're like, "Why? I got 20 other buyers that don't want that."
One of the things we're talking about, like, is it better now to be a buyer than it has been, is because of that. So, like, not only are down payment assistance programs to help you with cash requirements, there's also the ability to negotiate with sellers, because sellers, I don't want to use the word desperate, but the amount of buyers that they're seeing who are interested in their home and willing to make offers on their home is less than it has been, right? And so days on market are increasing. So sellers who are on the market, guys, they want to sell. They're not like thinking about selling. No, they're actively trying to sell. It's taking longer for them to get as many eyeballs on the property. It's taking longer for them to get legitimate offers. And so you have an opportunity to maybe extract some additional money from the seller, not just in a lowered purchase price, but maybe it's giving them a little bit more what they want on the purchase price, but asking for seller credit, which can help you get over the cash requirement hump. So down payment assistance, seller credits, like these things will allow you to not have to, I mean, it takes thousands and thousands of dollars to buy a home usually. Where's that money coming from? So you have opportunities to get that, which is why it's another really good time, if you're a buyer, to be actively in this market. Negotiate.
It really is. And, one of the things about this show, we've always been very clear-eyed about what's happening in the economy and the real estate market in Florida. And we've said many, many times, and I've said it on the air, if you're an investor and you don't have to buy right now, I'd keep my powder dry. I've been saying that. Johnny thought that was a funny saying. But I say keep your powder dry right now, because I think that we're going to have softer
Meaning be
market.
ready to use it. Be ready.
Be ready
we
to
got
have that
2 minutes to talk about this SHIP program. You want to talk about
so
that?
I wanted,
I said SHIP, Jimmy, SHIP.
I heard it.
SHIP.
Yep.
Okay.
That's what I'm doing in my pants.
Yeah, there you go. But yes, because you just used that program, didn't you?
So I've used it successfully in the past. It's $100,000. It's a great headline. Okay. Starting, I think it's May 5th, SHIP, which is the State Housing Initiative Program, Palm Beach County is basically saying, hey, we're going to take X amount of families. We're going to give them up to $100,000, which is down payment assistance, right? You can use it for your side. It does stay attached to the home. There's some strings attached to it, but it's zero interest. It's not repayable as long as you're there living in the home and you don't refinance. But here's the kicker. It's funded $3 million. And if every family is getting 100,000, which they won't, but if they, let's say that's 30 families.
Yeah.
They take 100 applications, right? Starting May 5th.
Right.
So it's there.
It's like winning the lottery.
You can get in, but you need to now you need to be getting in line. You need to have all of your documents. There's some education required.
Yeah.
If you're interested in this, let's talk, because it's definitely there, but it's going to be you're going to be in an exclusive club,
Yes, it's true. I hope you guys enjoyed the show today. Mike, thank you so much for manning
Being
the
here?
show. Yes, and Jimothy,
Right.
if it wasn't for you guys, we would not have a show today. So thank you so
Same
much.
to you, Jim.
Really,
And
really,
to our buyers.
yes,
and
and
our sellers.
congratulations
Thanks,
to everyone.
everybody,
Yeah, and thank you.
for
And
the trust and
we'll have
congrats.
Johnny back next week, so we'll have a more normal show, and hopefully Ross is going to come next week.
Okay.
We're going to talk next week a little about insurance. There's a concept called slow adaptation process that they're predicting that insurance costs across the nation in 7 states are not going to go down anymore.
They're catching up to us.
And do you think Florida is going to be in that 7?
Ooh.
We'll talk about it next week.
Well, we still got about 40 seconds. To
Oh,
fill
do
here,
we?
Jim.
Well, I tell you what, I can let everybody know if you're a sports fan, you're really going to be interested and want to keep it right here on Real Radio 92.1 because we got a little locker room coming up here for a couple hours. Then we got a Florida Panthers game this afternoon.
right.
And then going into this evening, we're going to be carrying the Final Four, the Florida Gators.
That's awesome.
Taking on, who they take? Auburn, I believe they're
And
playing.
rumors